Let's settle one of the most frustrating questions in yoga. If your hips or shoulders don't rotate much, can you change that? Or is it literally your bone structure? This comes up constantly, and today's question gets straight to the point. Rebecca wrote in and asked, I don't have a lot of internal hip or shoulder rotation at the moment. How much of this can be improved with practice? And how much is limited by anatomical variation? Now, again, this is a great question because it hits a very common sort of fear that yoga students have. Is this something wrong with me, or is this just how I'm built? And how do I know the difference between whether it's how I'm built or if it's muscles that I should change? So let's walk through this in a clear and practical way. First of all, human bone structure is far more similar than it is different. Of course, there are a few places where natural variation, which does exist, really does show up, and yoga makes those places kind of more obvious. The two big ones are the hips and the shoulders. Let's start with the hips. Remember, the hip is a ball and socket joint, and both parts, the socket and the top of the thigh bone here, can vary slightly from person to person. You don't need the deep biomechanics here, but you should know a few things. Some people have sockets that face a little bit more forward or a little bit more sideways. Some have joints that sit a little deeper or a little bit more shallower. And some have thigh bones that naturally rotate a little bit more inward or outward. Now, these differences can absolutely change how much internal or external rotation you get. The key point is, for a very small number of people, these variations make positions like lotus genuinely inaccessible, no matter how long they practice. Now, I've only met a handful in over 20 years of teaching. And the way you usually see this sort of coming up is through long-term patterns. If someone practices consistently for 10, 15 years, does the prep work, strengthens and opens everything, and still feels like they're hitting that hard bony stop, or it never changes, that's when you start to suspect structure. But not instantly, not right away. But remember, most people don't fall into this category anyhow. Now, the shoulder is similar. But the place where bone shape matters most is not really rotation. It's overhead movement. It has to do with the shape of the acromion. That's this part right here. Okay, this is, you call this like almost like the roof of the shoulder joint. So there's three different types. There's what's called the flat acromion, which is kind of the most open shape and gives the most amount of overhead. You've got a curved acromion, which is the most common, which is just a gentle downward, but still allows for normal movement. And then the third one is the hooked one. But this section on the front actually hooks down and forward. And this can create a very early block to raising the arm over the head in the front or in the side. Now, to be fair, I test this in every workshop when I have people distinguish shoulder movement from scapular movement, because keep in mind, when you raise your arm up to here, most people, you hit the acromion. Everything above this is scapular movement. So, but again, most people here, there's very few people, but they do exist, who can take their arm all the way up without using their shoulder blade. So, bone structure can limit rotation, but it's uncommon. It's usually blocking this movement. For the vast majority of people, limited rotation comes from muscle tension, the joint capsule, maybe general connective tissue stiffness, or just a nervous system that hasn't been taught to go there yet. And those things can improve slowly, safely, and over time. There's some other factors there, but we should always assume it's muscle tissue first until we find out otherwise. So what you want to do is not chase the extremes anyway and overstretch the ligaments, right? Because the ligaments give the joint stability. If you overstretch them, you can destabilize the joint. Okay? Now, there's a somewhat practical way to tell. If your end range feels like a hard, abrupt stop, like something is physically blocking motion, that might be bone. Okay? It's a different feeling, like it can't be adjusted further, right? If it feels like a gradual resistance or it can be adjusted a little bit further, then chances are you're getting into tension of soft tissue of one form or another. And typically, soft tissue can, of course, adapt. Either way, nothing is wrong. It simply means your practice needs to work with your structure, not against it. So, in closing, if you've got a question, you want me to break it down in one of these deep dives, go to yoganatomy.com/my question, send it in.